All right, welcome to a very special edition of Bolling. As we just heard a little bit earlier today, Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary to Donald Trump, had her first press briefing in the briefing room. It was packed, folks. And as expected, the most important and one of the first things that she talked about was the immigration issue and how Trump is following through on everything he promised. And it just blows my mind to think that some of these left-wing media, the legacy media, the lefties, the nut jobs, the Democrats, are surprised about some of the things that he's doing when he made it loud and clear that it was, if you reelected Donald Trump, that was going to be day one, he was going to tackle the immigration epidemic problem that's sweeping the country. So these people who are complaining about what's going on right now are completely off their rocker. They have no voice at the table right now. And I'm setting this up because I'm going to bring in someone who is one of the leading experts, one of the most important people in this space regarding immigration and other things. She's also, in my opinion, one of the best journalists ever to walk the earth, period. I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about ever. I'm going to bring in my good friend, Lara Logan. You may remember her from 60 Minutes, but also we've been friends for a long time. Lara, you are one of the best journalists ever to walk in, and I just would love your first reaction. We'll get into some of the things you're doing. A new podcast coming, folks, by the way. Lara, look for her new podcast in a bit, but we'll get into that in a second. But I just want your first reaction to, number one, what Trump is doing since he was sworn in a week ago, and then what do you think this whole first press briefing is indicating going forward with regards to immigration?
Well, Trump is changing the system, right? And we've seen that just in terms of efficiency of government. What he's trying to say is what we've become used to over our lifetimes doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to exist. And that's kind of one of the most important reasons that people elected him the first time around. They wanted a businessman and not a politician, because they were saying, we don't like the way politicians have been doing things. We gave you a chance, you lied to us, you let us down, and we've had enough. Now, he wasn't able to really do that as effectively as he wanted in his first term because he didn't know government. He didn't understand the deep state and in all of its tentacles. And, perhaps him and his team really now, what has happened over the last few years, especially under Biden, has brought things into much sharper focus for people across the country. And people are now realizing that, even if Donald Trump fixes the economy, even if he closes the border, if you don't start to address some of these much more significant policy issues, which are like, do you want open borders, which means the end of sovereignty, the end of nationalism? It means the end really of, the republic, the American Republic. It means the end of individual liberties because you're now going to be ruled by bureaucrats who are unelected, who are ruling from afar. It means a lot of things that we have just allowed to slip through over the years. And so what you're seeing is this is definitely a new administration. When their appointments were being blocked, Eric, one of the first things that they did was issue an executive order exercising their proper authority, because clearances really fall under the Department of Defense, not under Justice or the FBI. And who is the commander-in-chief? Well, it's Donald J. Trump. So he said, you can't block clearances for my people. Boom, here's an executive order exercising his legal authority, and that problem went away. Now, just think in the last administration how many years they lost of effectiveness because they didn't know and understand and exercise that kind of power. So that's one of the things I think that is very different. In regards to Caroline Leavitt's press conference, the biggest difference is they're not apologizing or begging anymore. It felt a little bit like with the rhinos and the establishment politicians, no matter what stripes they happen to be wearing that particular day, that the Trump administration was falling over itself the first time to explain itself and to apologize and to fit in and to, constantly under attack, trying to defend itself. And it is very clear from the American people, the mandate they have given Donald Trump is, we don't want you to do that. We don't want you to waste a second. And you're looking really at a president that in his first, few days sent a very clear message that he is not holding back and he's not waiting.
Yeah, and one of the beautiful things is for 4 years let's call it 12 years under Barack Obama and under Joe Biden, the last 4 years, ICE and the Border Patrol had no idea what they were supposed to do. They knew what their job was, to enforce the border, keep illegals out, keep the invaders from bringing in, murders, rapists, drugs, fentanyl, keep them out, breaking the law, they knew that was their job. But when the feds are saying don't enforce the law, don't do your job, they were confused from the minute one Trump gets sworn in. And that very afternoon, they're starting to enforce the border. I want to jump to this first soundbite. Laura, if you don't mind, there's so much to get to. If I can just throw some elements at you and love your visceral reaction right afterwards. This first one I love. It's one of my favorite things, and we're only a few days into Trump's presidency, where an illegal gets caught, he's about to get sent home, and look at how he responds to it. Listen.
I'm not going back to Haiti. Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
If you didn't catch that, is I'm not going back to Haiti. F Trump, fuck Trump. I love Biden. I love Obama. There's going to be a lot of that coming up soon, I guess. Laura, your thoughts?
Honestly, Eric, it kind of breaks my heart because I just feel like we did a terrible thing to so many people. We made promises that were lies. So they were empty promises, right? And they weren't a better life. And what we did is this administration, the last administration, they broke the law over and over again. They introduced policies that were unconstitutional, that had, really had no place in this country. But, and then they gave power to some of the worst criminals on the face of the earth. And they empowered our adversaries, state adversaries. So when you look at, cartels today, you shouldn't just see a drug cartel. You need to understand that you're looking at a transnational criminal organization. Mm-hmm. And then when you add to that, right, it's a foreign paramilitary organization that is backed by the Venezuelan government, by the CCP in China, by the Iranians. And then you add to that the Iranian Quds Force, right, and who are highly trained and have the backing of a state behind them. And then you have Islamic terrorist groups. And all of these people have been uniting, right? They've been united to bring down this country. The Biden administration empowered, enabled, encouraged, was probably heavily involved in many parts of that. And what they did is they used people. As always, they used people all over the world. They gave them false hope. They made promises that should never have been made. And they put these people at the mercy of evil people. And, that is, it's so hard for me as a person, right, as a human being, to know that there are people who are, good people who are scared right now through no fault of their own. And it's not Donald Trump's fault. You know what I mean? It's not the fault of the American people. There is a certain reality here that if you open those borders and you run these policies, you destroy national security, you destroy sovereignty, you destroy everything you have. And there are people, American citizens, that are in terrible situation across this country. So, to me, it's just a heartbreaking, terrible situation. And I have a lot of respect for the people who are trying to make it right, because they knew, the Biden administration, the open borders ideologues, the globalist cult, whatever you want to call them, they knew that when they brought in human beings and they played with the lives of humans, right, that they would create webs that were very difficult to untangle. And they would be webs that would be fraught with pain and emotion and real suffering. And they know that most of us don't want that, right? Most of us, when we see that, we're like, oh, no, we don't want to hurt people. I mean, I believe that most people are good, but they don't care. These people are just pawns, just like they don't care about hundreds of thousands of missing children. They don't care about who's sex trafficked, whether they're girls or boys or kids or adults. They don't care that pregnant women are brought across this border by the cartels and raped every day to pay off a debt. They don't care. They don't care. That's why they don't care about starting wars, or sending people. Eric, you know my background. I mean, I spent a lot of time on the battlefield in Afghanistan. And once I was there 4.5 months pregnant, with Marines in the area of Afghanistan that was so dangerous. It was so laden with IEDs. So many Americans had died there that we couldn't even use the roads. Okay, we were in sewage canals most of the time, and I just think about all those Americans who were sent to die there on foreign battlefields, when the people in charge knew that they were using less than 10% of our advanced military capability, that none of those kids actually needed to die, that they could have dealt with this in a very different situation, in a very different way. They had stealth thermal drones, okay? You can send those drones with facial recognition and voice recognition software and take out the entire leadership of the Taliban today that is out in the open in Afghanistan, if you really wanted to. But no, people in power would rather send soldiers and Marines to traipse through minefields to die. And I witnessed that with my own eyes. So now when I see the pain of people, that guy doesn't seem like a very good guy, you know what I mean? But who knows? I don't know. Someone's a father, someone's a brother, there's families that are going to be affected. And it's not, and there's no one brave enough right now to correct this wrong. Because Trump's going to take heat for it.
Well, I'm glad you set it up that way, because I know he's probably a friend of yours, a friend of ours. So we went from 4 years of Kamala Harris as the border czar and Alejandro Mayorkas. I don't know what the hell that guy did for 4 years other than destabilize the American, the whole country.
I think it's worse, Eric. I think he did more than destabilize. I think he is heavily, heavily involved in the complete and utter destruction of everything that we have known. And the whole world is watching right now. I mean, I've had so many conversations with people from Europe because they did the same thing there. There's an invasion of Judeo-Christian culture and people have been used as a weapon, and that breaks my heart. But I'm a journalist. I'm not the guy that has to send him home.
Well, let's talk about that guy, because this is the person I was talking about, who we both know. Tom Homan, tough guy, and wow, what a great choice. Again, Trump, give him credit for picking the right people for the right jobs. Listen to Tom Homan respond to that guy who says, "I'm not going back to Haiti."
You see that video, I'm curious, what do you think?
Well, he's wrong. He's going back to Haiti. I tell him that.
And then they asked him, well, what about the other ones? And he said, they're going home too. So, I want to juxtapose the Alejandro Mayorkas to Tom Homan. Your thoughts?
Oh, I mean, you're literally, okay, people won't like it when I say this, but you're literally talking about, good versus evil, right? Alejandro Mayorkas, I don't think we've begun to scratch the surface of what that man has done. He presided over a system where they knew that more people were dying crossing that border than at any other time in the history of this country. They knew that children were being raped on a daily basis. I mean, that man didn't care. Not only did he not care, he's one of the, the Dr. Evil kind of architects of this, right? And one of the major enforcers of this global invasion. So that man deserves to be held accountable to the full extent of the law. And when it comes to Tom Homan, what I like about Tom Homan is consistent with a number of people in this administration. He's not trying to speak like a politician. He's going to tell you how it is. I do think that Trump made a remarkable choice in Tom, because he understands the border, and he means what he says. He's very direct, and he's been savaged, right? He's been targeted. So he's not going to buckle the first time that they come at him. I don't know how much he can take. I don't know what they're going to throw at him. I have a feeling he can take a lot, right? The indications are that man can take a lot, and he's prepared to take it. And honestly, that needs to be applied across the board in this administration. But you can't even put Alejandro Mayorkas and Tom Homan in the same sentence, because one of them is true and is honest and is trying to do the best for this country, and the other one is a traitor who is guilty of treason and who has been part of a seditious conspiracy. So he needs to be prosecuted under 18 U.S. Code. I think it's Chapter 115, Section 2381, if I remember correctly, treason and sedition and subversive activities. I mean, that man,
And
that man is.
noteworthy, Trump just brought back the death penalty for treason, or he said he was going to enforce the death penalty for treason. I think you're speaking to so many people when you say that, me included. Listen. I lost a loved one. I lost a loved one to the fentanyl that came across the southern border, and for that man, Mayorkas, to look the other way when there are so many people dying in America from the fentanyl coming across, and to laugh about it.
They want the fentanyl.
I would love to see him prosecuted. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, they want the fentanyl. They don't care about your loved one. They don't care about anyone. I mean, they're quite happy for Americans to keep dying. How do you know that? Well, just talk to anyone, in the DEA over the last 4 years. They were effectively over and over again told to step aside. And when you open up your border, what they know is far worse than what we know about all of that. I mean, right now, the CCP is building a massive pharmaceutical factory inside of Mexico. What do you think they're going to produce there? Fentanyl, carfentanil, whatever they need, right? I mean, they have, they're in, as bad as it has been the last few years. Their plan and the end state that they envisage is much, much worse than where we are now. Just look at Mexico, which is a narco state. And I want to say for the record, for all those morons out there who keep saying that, Mexico has an insurgency. No, it does not have an insurgency. The cartels run the government. They run the country. And that is not an insurgent force fighting to overthrow a government. They've already overthrown the government. So there's a lot of U.S. officials that say that kind of nonsense, especially your rhinos and your Republicans. And this is the first time we actually have an administration that is willing to take this on. And with people like Tom Homan and with Pete Hegseth and with Donald Trump and with J.D. Vance, I mean, we're early days here. And what they have taken on is massively difficult. But they want you to think it can never be done. And that's not honest. It can be done. You just have to have the political will to do it.
And he got the political will because he was given the mandate by the American people with such a resounding win, meaning Trump. Let me just pivot a touch here. Selena Gomez, pop superstar, just icon. They loved her. She put this video up. I don't know why she would do something like this, but take a listen to this.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. How many people are getting attacked? Children. I don't understand.
Okay, so Selena, Lara says all her people, and we have a full screen here. We'll show that, folks. This guy convicted of a child rape, this one suspected ties to ISIS terrorist organizations, MS-13 gang member, another guy possession of fentanyl and guns, another one wanted for murder in Mexico, kidnapping, sexual assault on a child, assault on female and firearms, discharging a firearm, 3 counts of aggregated DUI, convicted of manslaughter. It goes on and on, these people that Selena Gomez calls my people. Would you like to respond to Ms. Gomez?
I mean, it makes you want to throw up. I'll be honest. When I see her like that, it makes me want to throw up. On the other hand, when I look at it rationally, she is not even aware of what you're talking about, Eric. I mean, she is not talking about those people. If you look at how the border has been covered by the media for a long, long time, we have defined national security in terms of immigration. So whenever you see a news story about the border, it's all about this poor family and how they've struggled to get here for a better life and how terrible their journey was, how many people died along the way, how many people were raped. And that is true. I mean, you have to acknowledge that is true, because when you look at the whole truth, you don't want to blind yourself. But that does not account for what we're talking about here. They want you to think that everyone coming over the border is just a poor, hapless person who's struggling to make a better life. And instead, what we have had is an organized, planned invasion of the United States of America, where foreign paramilitary organizations and foreign governments have inserted hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and they're using ordinary people as cover. So the people that, Selena Gomez thinks she cares so much about, They're the cover for all these, cartels and for the hundreds of thousands of trained and uniformed members of the Chinese Communist Party's People Liberations Army that have been brought into this country for to go against the United States and to threaten the national security of this country. So, but these people have been lied to so much. You can see what's happening here. We live in fifth generation warfare, which is information warfare. So she's in her Hollywood bubble or her music bubble or whatever. She's, watching certain media every day. And she literally has she's out of touch with reality because her reality is so distorted. Because the media has failed. Most of the media is not doing its job. And worse than that, they're acting as foot soldiers for those who are conducting an information war against this country and trying to destroy it. So there are people like Selena Gomez who still think that none of that is true, that all those people that you're holding up, that that's made up by the evil right wing or the MAGA people or the Trump people. I mean, it's crazy that we do that, but that is an indicator that people are spending more time in the digital world than they are in reality. And it's an indicator of the failure of our leaders, to be honest, because, an honest leader today would stand up and say, we have a problem. We have a national security problem. We have to stop defining the border in terms of how many people come across. And we have to start looking at national security metrics. These cartels, which are foreign paramilitary organizations, they have foot soldiers across America, in every state, in cities and small towns and in rural areas. And they are working with people who really have the ability to threaten the security of every community, not to mention, the drug warfare that's going on, which the Chinese know all about because that's how they lost Taiwan to the British, right? I mean, Hong Kong, that's how they lost Hong Kong to the British, through drug warfare, which is a real thing, that if you disable your society with narcotics, you kill off, people, you break up families. No one who's an addict is running for Congress or writing letters to the representatives or joining the military, or creating, innovating, and building onto the economy. They're a drain on your society. And so there's multiple parts to this. This is called unrestricted warfare that America's enemies are carrying out. And one of the worst things is that there's so many morons across this country who, in some respects, have failed to do what is incumbent upon every single one of us, is to try to figure out the truth. I don't feel sorry for Selena Gomez. She's an idiot.
Lara, agree 1,000,000%. The destabilization of the illegal invader crisis epidemic is incredible. And you're right. Of course, China says, yeah, go ahead. Here's some fentanyl. Push it across. And they support this open door that allows these criminals and narcotics traffickers and child traffickers as well. This is a huge epidemic, and I believe you're on the forefront of some of that as well. Homan was in Chicago, and literally while they're walking around, grabbed someone who was suspected of a double homicide, just in Chicago randomly. Kristi Noem, the new DHS secretary, was in New York yesterday. Take a look at what she had to say.
Here in New York City this morning, we are getting the dirt bags off these streets.
So she said, we're going to get the dirt bags off the street. What are your thoughts on Kristi Noem in that position?
Well, Trump made some interesting choices, right? I mean, Kristi Noem has got a big responsibility on her hands, but she actually has a real border czar, as opposed to last time when Kamala Harris was supposed to be the border czar, and then they denied years later that she was even the border czar after they appointed her, and there was an actual official White House, record that she was appointed. So it's kind of staggering. But I think what's interesting here, so Eric, I try to take a step back and see some of these things play out, right? It's early days. We don't really know how Kristi Noem is going to fare in that position, but we do know that she understands the optics of this, and she's speaking to that very, very quickly. We do know that Tom Homan has a lot of authority, and they're figuring this out. I think it's kind of amusing when people say, well, there's a lot of infighting and there's, disagreement behind the scenes, and this is somehow a bad thing. When you're trying to take on something like this, you've got people working together, you've got shifting authorities, there's inevitably going to be some, you're going to have to figure out how to work together, right? When you have a new team, you always have to figure out how to work with each other. When you've been working with each other forever and you finish each other's sentences, you don't even worry about half the stuff that you had to worry about in the beginning. So I think it's interesting to see that her and Tom Homan do not seem to be in any way competitive yet. That there haven't been any fishes that have shown themselves publicly. And they both seem to have a very clear mandate on what they're going to do. So, I don't like to be, I don't like to get ahead and say, I'm not a cheerleader. My job isn't to cheerlead for the administration. I'm going to have the difficult job of, if they don't keep their promises, I'm going to be one of those people that said, hey, you're not keeping your word. You know what I mean? But I'm not doing it for political points. I'm not doing it. I'm not making it up. I'm not doing it because somebody paid me to do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you're not keeping your word, I'm going to tell the truth.
It's called
journalism. That's our job.
And again, I introduce you as one of the premier journalists this country's or the world has ever really seen. I'm not being overly complimentary because Lara's my friend. She is one of the best journalists ever to walk the earth. And you're right. So, let's talk a little bit about that, because we have some breaking news that happened just literally minutes before this interview. CNN, Jim Acosta walked off the show on CNN. He ended his show and said, I'm done with CNN because CNN isn't going to hold truth to power with Trump. They're not going to hold him accountable. But I'm just laughing because their numbers have been tanking because they were so much, they were lying to their audience about Kamala Harris actually being neck and neck with Donald Trump going into the election. And that's why people are fleeing. Meanwhile, let's talk about if we have a few minutes with you, I'd love to just talk about the state of journalism, certainly now since Trump has been reelected.
Well, I would say if I were Eric Acosta, what's his name?
Jim Acosta.
I would preserve my records, okay? Because these people have done, he's leaving because CNN's not going to hold the Trump administration accountable. Wow. Talk about pathetic. That is incredible. You had a senile man. He was senile when he ran against Donald Trump in 2020. Everyone already knew it then. They lied about that. They lied about Hunter Biden's laptop. They lied about Russia collusion. For me, it's really painful. The Russia collusion one is the one that bothers me the most a lot of the time, because that was the beginning of their, of the rot, where they had this plan that was already in place before Trump won, because I think they were going to take him out. They thought they were going to win, and they were going to take him out anyway, because they didn't want him to ever be able to run again. And so you look at these people and you look at what they have done, how they have lied over and over and over again. And not only would they never been held accountable, not only were they given big salaries and, and cushy jobs and security and all of that, but what did they do? They were rewarded. They gave themselves awards, and the highest awards in journalism. I may as well throw my awards away. Right? Because what do they mean anymore? The Pulitzer, what was the count, whatever the board is, the board of the Pulitzer Prizes, which is one of the, the biggest prize for print journalism. They just reviewed all of their old awards, and in light of all this new information, they didn't revoke any of them.
Right.
So you had people rewarded for writing that Trump was a Russian spy, that he was controlled by Putin, that he stole the election. None of that was true. And you review that, and you still give yourself an A+. I'm sorry, but these people are absolutely reprehensible in what they have done. They are moral cowards. They are morally corrupt. And they're shameless. Jim Acosta is upset that CNN's not going to hold. What did they do to hold the Biden administration accountable? What did they do when their backs were against the wall and they were forced to acknowledge certain truths? They did it reluctantly, they did it dishonestly, and they have never, ever, ever apologized. And you know what? You can't even, an apology cannot even fix the damage that they have done. Do you know, I got to say this. I have to say this. Do you know what it is like to be a child that is trafficked for sex, that is raped every single day, day after day after day, that is plied with narcotics to make them compliant, that is taught what to do through pornography, that is subjected to sometimes sadistic pornography called hurtcore, that is sometimes brutally murdered in snuff videos. I mean, this is what has been happening. The people who run those businesses, the people who run those operations and get rich out of it, richer than most of us can ever imagine, those people have been empowered and enabled by these policies and these leaders. And you didn't, you lied about it, you covered it up, you enabled it, you didn't do your job, and now you want to talk about holding truth to power? You are truly, I mean, a horrible human being.
Yeah, and I will tell you that CNN, MSNBC, some of the left-leaning media never questioned Alejandro Mayorkas when he said the border is secure. I don't know, everything's fine at the border. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Meanwhile, we're seeing the exact opposite. We're seeing destabilization in the country. We're seeing children dying by the tens of thousands from fentanyl. We're seeing hundreds of thousands of young people, young kids being trafficked for exactly what you pointed out. And CNN just takes their, oh, everything's fine here, and doesn't. They hold no one to power for the last 4 years, 0.0. And as you point out very astutely, Joe Biden was basically almost a corpse in the White House, and they lied and they said no.
From day one.
And that Joe Scarborough and Mika said, we were being ridiculous. We were lying. Joe Biden is perfect. He's lucid. He's coherent. He's better than he's ever been, Joe Scarborough said in the fourth year of his term, when the guy was clearly weekend at Bernie's.
They make me sick, Eric. They literally do. They make me sick to my stomach. Do you know how many things that they have done that have been dishonest? Look how they rolled out Chris Krebs from CISA and put him on 60 Minutes so that they could cement the steal of the 2020 election, right? And then they could go after anyone who dared to speak up. Look at all the lawsuits that have been launched. You know how many stories these so-called journalists have buried and refused to cover and looked away? Let's talk about vaccine injured. Let's talk about healthcare workers who were deceived and put their children up to be vaccinated, who now have quadriplegic kids. What about the kids that have died of myocarditis? Where were these so-called journalists then holding people to account? No, they were more worried about making up stories, endless coverage of one fake indictment after another, one false indictment, going after, the insurrectionists of January 6th. How dare they? How dare they stand up there and treat the American people as if they are completely brainless? And how dare they look down on the American people, right? The very people that they think should be, for example, I don't know, paying for their kids to go to college, right? Because all student debt should be forgiven. Those hardworking Americans who are, who built this country, they should be patronized and disregarded and dismissed. And now you've been forced into a corner because you weren't able to silence them forever. You weren't able to send them to die without being held accountable. Now you're going to be held accountable, and you're going to stand up in front of the American people. What hypocrites. I mean, these people are completely worthless.
Lara, you've been very generous with your time. You're a very busy woman and very busy journalist. Tell us about the new podcast coming out soon.
Coming up in a few weeks, Going Rogue with Lara Logan. You can join me, I hope.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you'll find us on X. We'll be all over. There's no paywall, so it's going to be different. This is going to be sort of the unplugged version. This is not 60 Minutes. But I think we have some interesting things coming up.
All right, we're looking forward to it, Lara. We'd love to have you back, and I'll see you soon. Lara, my good friend, Lara Logan, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's it for us at Bolling today, Tuesday. We'll see you back tomorrow morning. A lot going on, folks. Stay tuned to Bolling.